Ohio State takes on Mount St. Mary's on Tuesday evening. The Buckeyes looking to stay undefeated with its second matchup of the year against a team with the nickname of the Mountaineers, and not the final team they will play, called the Mountaineers, as well as, of course, they'll play West Virginia and Cleveland, because nothing better than a neutral site game. We know this. We know this. Buckeyes will take on Mount St. Mary's. Mount St. Mary's this year, 280th in Ken Palm, 252nd in Bart Torvik. They sit at 1-5 on the young season. It's not been a hot start for Mount St. Mary's. They did push Maryland, but all in all, they've lost to West Virginia by 16. That'll be a common opponent for Ohio State. Lost to Cincinnati by 17. To Maryland, just 95-90. That was a tight one there. And then another common opponent, Ohio State, beat Western Michigan just last week. And Mount St. Mary's lost to Western Michigan 83-60. So a 23-point loss there. That means Ohio State should win this game by about 50 points, right? Not really how it works. The only win of the year so far for Mount St. Mary's comes against St. Francis. Mount St. Mary's coming off an NCAA tournament appearance in their first year under head coach Donnie Lynn. Let's look at the offense here from the Mountaineers. Well, not great. They're averaging 65.8 points per game this season. That's not going to win you a lot of games. 95.7 offensive rating is really not good whatsoever. Shooting at 42.9% from the field and 36% from the three-point line. So of all the numbers there you hear, the three-point shooting at least, that gives you some hope if you're Mount St. Mary's. They absolutely love and adore the three ball. Do the Mountaineers. They're 92nd percentile in college basketball this season with a 50% three-point attempt rate. So of all the field goals they're taking this year, literally 1 out of every 2 are coming from behind the arc. That is a high number. They've got 3 games making 10 or more three-pointers this season, and they made 17, a season high total for them, and a loss to Maryland just a couple of games ago. They score threes in bunches, and in general, they're scoring off assists as well. They're 35th in the NCAA this season in assist rate. This is going to apply more pressure on Ohio State guards for sure. Tight closeouts, close-up ball, or a lot of ball movement. So you're going to have to be aware off the ball. Look at backdoor cuts and players moving off the ball offensively. Mount St. Mary's, they can make threes and they can share the ball as well. You look at their approach offensively on an individual basis. Really, really balanced approach here for Mount St. Mary's. They've got 4 players scoring 10 points per game or more so far this season. And in the 6 games they've played this year, they've got Arlandis Keys, who's led them in scoring twice, both of those times coming off the bench. Trey DeVoe led once. Luke McElden led once. Patrick Hay led once. And Xavier Lipscomb, their leading scorer, has only led his team in scoring once this entire season. So they've got, again, 4 players scoring double figures this season, and they've had a different leading scorer in every single game so far this year, except for 1. So the question I have, when you look at a team that made it to the NCAA tournament last year, now this year sits at 1-5 on the young season and is really, really struggling offensively, my question is, what has gone wrong? What's gone differently from last season and this season? And quite frankly, the answer is not necessarily much, but the offensive rating, field goal percentage, free throw percentage, turnover rate, offensive rebounding rate, fast break scoring, paint points, second chance points, all of those numbers this year are 38th percentile or worse in college basketball. So you look at all of the major stat profiles other than three-point shooting. You look at field goal percentage, shooting from the free throw line, ability to take care of the basketball, ability to create new possessions, to score in the paint. All of those things are very, very poor. And to make matters worse, if you take out field goal percentage, which is lifted up by that 3-point percentage Mount St. Mary's has, their best metric is just 22nd percentile in college basketball this season. Now, last year, the offense wasn't great, but they had a 103.3 offensive rating. That's better than where they're at this year. The 3-point shot, it was solid. Assist rate was absolutely excellent. The offense was still bad last year. It wasn't special by any measure. It just was less bad than this year. So there's a lot of metrics that have taken a slide here for Mount St. Mary's, and they're 1-5 in large part due to the poor offensive play so far this season from the Mountaineers. If you look at just their overall results this season, let me get there now in just a second. If you just look at their total scoring so far this season, again, they had the big performance against Maryland, scoring 90 points in a losing effort against the Terrapins. Outside of that, 54 points against West Virginia, 62 points against Bucknell, 74 points in that win over St. Francis, 55 points against Cincinnati, and 60 points against Western Michigan. So you take out that 90-point outburst against Maryland, where they still lost. They've scored over 70 points just one time, and they've scored 60 points or below in 3 games this season. That's way too many. That has got to be better offensively for Mount St. Mary's. So you would think it might be a good spot here for Ohio State. Defensively, a defense for the Buckeyes that hasn't been bad yet this year. It's not been horrible, but the offense has definitely kind of shouldered the load for the Buckeyes. So this is an opportunity for defense. The defense can get a little bit of confidence out of this game, you would think. Now, defensively for Mount St. Mary, 76.5 points per game allowed. That's not going to do it when you're scoring below 66 points per game offensively. 111.2 defensive rating is just not good enough. 41.3 from the field and 31.8% from the three-point line. Our opponents shooting against Mount St. Mary's this season. Now, defensively, there is some hope. There are some metrics where they are better. The first of which, and chief among them, is defensive rebounding. They've got a 71.1% defensive rebounding rate this season and 27.5 defensive rebounds per game as well. Those numbers are very, very good. You can't complain about that whatsoever. Overall, this is a team led by Xavier Lipscomb in terms of defensive rebounding. His size doesn't limit him on the glass whatsoever. You look at McElden, you look at Mason So. Those are big time helpers on the defensive glass as well. And that's big for them because now you're limiting extra shots that the opposing offense can get off. And when offensively for Mount St. Mary's, you turn the ball over at way too high of a rate. You can't make shots. You're really dependent on the 3-ball this year. That's huge based on how bad their offense has been this year. So that's definitely helping them just have the ability to stay in more games. That also leads to them being 91st percentile so far this season in college basketball in percentage of points allowed on the second chance. They don't have great size, but they crash the boards. It's consider yourself playing 2K. We all remember playing 2K back in the day, or maybe you still do. And if you do, I respect that. You play 2K and you make the adjustment defensively, you want to crash the boards. We're not letting offenses pick up offensive rebounds and turn that into additional possessions and additional shots made. We're crashing the boards, and that's something they do well. Here's something they don't do well. And not only do they not do it poorly, they do it worse than literally any other team in college basketball. We found it. We found the basement for a team, which I think is the first time this entire season that Ohio State has played a team that is literally the worst in a stat category in all of college basketball, and it's here against Mount St. Mary's. They are 365th, which is the worst in college basketball in steal rate. 4.2% steal rate so far this season. And again, I mentioned offensively, they struggle with turnovers. They've got a poor turnover rate. Defensively, you're not creating any new possessions. The Mountaineers are not. They started great against West Virginia. They had 8 steals in that opening night game there for the Mountaineers. Mountaineer on Mountaineer action there. Who could miss that? I did, but I was watching Ohio State instead. Since then, 0-4, 1-3, and 1 steals in games since the West Virginia loss. You gotta be able to create more possessions when you're so bad offensively, and they can't. And again, 1-5 for a reason. It's going to put a lot of pressure on you defensively because now pretty much every possession you're guarding either against a field goal attempt from 3 or inside the arc, doesn't matter. It's a field goal attempt, or you're fouling and you're sending them to the free throw line. So pretty much every possession for Mount St. Mary's defensively ends in a shot being put up in some way, which in general is going to lead to points scored. So that's not great for the Mountaineers. They are solid defending in the paint. You kind of look back to Ohio State's game against Western Michigan. Talked about that a lot in the pregame show. Western Michigan, really, really strong presence in the paint offensively and defensively. And Ohio State ate up the Broncos in the paint. This is a very, very similar team where Mount St. Mary's right now allowing 27.3 paint points per game. That's a solid number. They can really wall up without any big time shot blockers. They don't have great size there at any spot, but they're still able to defend the paint well. Just 56% at the rim are offenses against Mount St. Mary's this year and 40% in the paint. Those numbers are really, really good, well above average across college basketball this year. We talked about Ohio State, though. We talked about them enough so far from shots inside the arc. The Buckeyes are absolutely spectacular in the rim, at the rim, and in the paint. You look at Brandon Knoll. Obviously, he's playing that dunker spot really, really well this year for Ohio State. Amari Bynum coming off the bench. A lot of his scoring comes from near the rim and in the paint. You look at Christoph Tilley and Bruce Thornton as well. Those are some of your most efficient scorers offensively for Ohio State. So this will be a bit of a strength on strength matchup. It's not something that I really worry about at this point, given what Ohio State has done consistently this season. And not just that, but you look at the fact that they have played strong paint defenses this year. Just last game, they play Western Michigan, and that was a strong paint defense, like I said, and the Buckeyes put up nearly 50 points. I think it was 48 paint points in that win. So overall, it's not something that concerns me. Now, as we looked at keys to the game in this one for Ohio State, every single preview, I put together something like that. I can do the exact same thing here now in this game for Ohio State, even though it's a team that obviously I'm having trouble finding ways to be frightened by Mount St. Mary's. They did push Maryland. They pushed them to the brink. They scored nearly 100 points. They still gave up nearly 100 points, but they took Maryland to a 95-90 losing effort. So how can that happen? Well, there's two things Ohio State needs to do well in this game. Number one, it's pretty obvious they need to defend the deep ball. Teams are shooting just 28% from the three-point line against Ohio State this season. Purdue-Fort Wayne made 16 three-pointers. Outside of that, every team, including Notre Dame, which has been a really, really good three-point shooting team so far this year. They've got a spectacular offensive backcourt. Do the Fighting Irish. Every team outside of Purdue-Fort Wayne has made 9 or less three-pointers in all their games played against Ohio State this season. That said, you got to keep Xavier Lipscomb in check here for the Mountaineers. He's 11 of 28. That's shooting nearly 40% from the three-point line while getting a bunch of volume early on this season. So you've got to keep your eye on him and overall limit the three-point shooting from Mount St. Mary's. If you want to stay in this game, three-pointers are much more valuable than two-pointers, obviously, when you can make them. If you're not forcing turnovers and you're not creating new possessions for offensive rebounding, look, if you can hit threes and you can defensive rebound, you can have a chance to at least keep this game tight. The other key to the game for Ohio State in this one, no naps. It sounds super simple, but I do think it's important, especially in this game. This game screams trap game for Ohio State. I said this about the App State game before they played Notre Dame. I think it was before Notre Dame. Whatever game was before Notre Dame. Sorry, I forget. Whichever game that was, I said that could very easily be a trap game because whoever that opponent was, which I guess I should just pull it up and figure it out. Who did Ohio State play? Just 1 second. Before Notre Dame, it was App State. So I was just straight up correct. You're welcome. In that game, there were a couple things that App State did, especially defensively, that made you believe that that game could stay close. You had your first real quiz or test of the year against Notre Dame coming up. It was easy to look ahead of that game. Exact same situation here, at least in terms of the outside noise that you can have. It's the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Look, I don't know about you, but for me, it's hard to stay super checked into work right now. I'm going to assume that that's probably the case for you as well. And it's just human nature, right? You look forward to Thanksgiving. You look forward to having some time off of work, eating some good food if you're into that, and just having some time to relax, right? I'm not saying that's the case inside the locker room for Ohio State. I don't think that anyone within that program would say, oh, yeah, we're concerned about this. We're concerned about our guys checking out for the game before Thanksgiving. But I think it's an element that can be added and that can add to this being a trap game. Again, it's a Tuesday before Thanksgiving. If you're checked out, if I'm checked out, there's potential at least that there could be others who are checked out within that program. You look at the big Black Friday game. You're going to travel to Pitt. That's another quiz. Pitt really not playing great this year. We'll talk about that when the time comes. But overall, I mean, you've got the game before Thanksgiving. You've got a look ahead spot where you're going to go on the road against Pitt the day after Thanksgiving. And oh, by the way, it's going to be sleepy in the shot because students are gone. There will be no student section for this game. So that said, you can see some elements here. So the second key to the game for Ohio State, no naps. No naps in this game. You got to get up. You got to be active early. You can't let them hit threes in your face. And if you do that, you should have a good shot to win this game. Look, if you look at what the BIP says, it doesn't project this game to be all that close necessarily. Ohio State should be favored by about 24.5 in this game for the spread. Total should be around 149.5. So you're seeing Ohio State winning this game somewhere in the 80s to the 60s, something like that. Look, Mount St. Mary's, they're really, really bad at taking care of the basketball. They're really, really bad at forcing turnovers. Ohio State is absolutely excellent with shooting the ball from the quote-unquote 2-point line inside the arc. You have that, and I think that raises Ohio State's floor in a game where, yeah, this team could hit some threes on you, but I think Ohio State's ability to score inside the 3-point line, combined with what they did against Western Michigan in their last game, another strong paint defense, it doesn't concern me. I struggle to find reasons in this game where Ohio State should necessarily be nervous. I struggle to find reasons where there could be upset potential. I don't think this game is all that horribly close, and I think Ohio State has a chance to win this game by 30-plus points in this game for sure. There's another game, by the way, where we could be looking at Ohio State putting up 100 points or near 100 points. So I'll take the Buckeyes to win this game, of course, and I would take Ohio State to win this game potentially by 25, 30, approaching over 30 points and be close to broaching that 100-point mark.